Hello and welcome back to the Sacred Money series. Today I'm with a man who started a company called Greenrope from the ground up. He's the CEO and founder. His name is Lars Helgeson, and he's quite an astounding man who has an interesting approach to building a software company that we really want to extract out from him today. So welcome to the series, Lars.
Thank you very much for having me.
I'm going to start by pointing out the fact that Greenrope is a software company that offers customer relationship management features as its core and happens to be 100% virtual as well. So your staff and you don't actually have a physical office, and you have meetings at your home. So that's kind of cool. I like that edge. Can you talk to us more about how your company day to day operates?
Yeah, it is a lot different than a lot of other companies. When you're working virtually, you've got people that are scattered all over, in our case, all over the world, that are helping to support us. So we have some people that work in different time zones to make sure that we get coverage for customer service. A lot of our people are here in the States, but they are able to connect in using our software to update each other. So we use our own project management features, our own CRM, our own collaboration tools to make things easier for them to work together. And then we also use other tools. If people are going to communicate with each other with the live chat feature, we use Olark for our customer service chat. And that has a rep-to-rep communication tool for chat. And then the developers like to use Skype and, some of these other tools to kind of talk to each other that way. So it's kind of a blended use of our own software and other software tools that help us run virtually, but it works very well. There's really one nice advantage to working virtually is that people aren't around each other long enough to create cliques. So they tend to focus on their job when they are together. Mm-hmm. And so there's not a lot of politics. People just, they know what they have to do to get their job done. And they work together and they have meetings and they collaborate very well, but it's not a densely packed office environment where, people are forming, these little well, I don't like her over there, I don't like him over there kind of attitude. They're very focused on making sure that they accomplish what they need to do.
Yeah, focused and happier, I imagine, because there's more freedom and flexibility. Yeah.
And not a lot of traffic, so
yeah, that's right.
They can wake up and, and I'm sure they're not all dressed professionally when they're on Skype or on chat with our customers, but no one needs to know and no one really cares. If they have their questions answered, then that's fine.
That's right. No one needs to know I'm wearing my pajama pants right now. Like who,
right.
Who cares? That's it. And so, you've got this real, I love your approach to how you've created Greenrope because you're into organic growth. You actually want to build a legacy that is going to last, past your retirement and something that is actually going to make a positive difference to people. And so can you talk about that kind of pull between software, which has, is so robotic and doesn't have, and you're a coder as well, someone who understands the nuts and bolts of software, and then you have to know people as well, and you have to be able to keep that in perspective. So how, as a CEO, have you grown with both hats, being able to wear both hats?
Yeah, it's it is interesting because as software being technical as it is, a lot of times people lose sight of the fact that for software to work well, it really has to work well with people. And so, behind the user interface, behind the functionality, behind the user experience are people on both sides. You've got users who have to know how to use software, and you've got to have the software that's built to support what these users want to do. And so there's it's a very interactive, iterative process. When we first started out, we were an email marketing company. And then we realized that the relationship between a company and the people on its email list really goes beyond the blast that you want to send out every week or two or month or however often you do it. And so we realized that for us to really help our customers better understand the relationships that they have with their customers, we had to write software that would allow them to manage all of those different channels. So rather than having a company, use software that does email marketing, and then maybe a different piece of software that does event management, or a different piece of software for their sales team, a different piece of software for HR and onboarding and training. You know, a lot of companies are used to using different pieces of software to do all these things. And the challenge really is about information silos. And so you get people that are used to doing business a certain way, where, you know, maybe the events team is used to using an event specific piece of software, and it may work great for them, but getting that data out of that software and into another department is a very human problem, because it's now you've got this data that's unstructured, or maybe not structured in a way that makes sense to the sales team, but the sales team still really needs to know who showed up to that event. And were they VIP sponsors? And, you know, did all of them show up, or did some of them not show up? And is that relevant to the sales process? Are they trying to get them to sponsor another event? So, you know, there's a lot of follow on that requires interaction that's really outside of just that events team's problem. And so to do that, you need to figure out from a human perspective on how to get that information shared between the different departments. And that's really the challenge that we've seen and it's not just between events and sales. Obviously, you've got marketing, HR, you've got account executives, you've got you've got senior management, you've got all these people that are doing different things. How do you make them all figure out how to share information in a meaningful way with each other? And that's a very human problem. It's solved by software, but it is a very human problem. And that's really what that's the vision behind what we've created, is the ability to bridge these gaps and to break down those silos, so that rather than causing too much information overload or having these blockades between different functional groups within a company, now all of the people that need to see the information in a relevant way can see it. And it's a complex problem, and it's different for almost every company. And so there's usually a lot of education that goes along with it, and there's a lot of strategic planning, so that you know that you're not just building something and throwing out there and hoping that it sticks. You're building something that people can actually use and will use on a regular basis.
Yeah, there's so much in that. I love that your approach is very long-term focused. So, you know, building long-term relationships with your customers. So you actually have an interest in creating a valuable product to them that is going to be still valuable in 10, 20 years time. It's not based on a transaction. It's like, this is a relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, and how does that sort of stand out in terms of a software company? Like, how does that really stand out for you in the market, and what has been your experience of that?
Well, you know, every company has a culture, and it's, you know, a lot of ways we are defined by our cultures, just like we as human beings are defined by what we do. I think a lot of people are, and the mark we make on the world, a lot of companies are defined by their culture, because that's how a company interacts with the world. And so what we've found is that companies that take on seed funding or go public get driven by different requirements, because then once as a company you've taken on investors, those investors are there because they want their money back. And it changes the focus of the company instead on how do we generate as much revenue as possible, as opposed to being able to stay pure to the vision of what you're actually trying to create, which is something valuable for small to mid-sized business owners, which is our focus, you know? So rather than having someone come in and say, here's $1 million, grow the business, try to get as big as you can, we've stayed organic. And so we can focus on what's important. And it's not to say that sales isn't important. It's important for every company. But for us, we're able to maintain a majority of our resources focused on customer service and development. And so that helps us stay focused on really what our users care about. They care about having really good technology, and they care about having access to a lot of support when they need it. And so we have a very human support team, you know, so I think we've got, of our team of 25 people, I think 9 or 10 of them now are customer service related. And 6 more are in development. So 2/3 of our company is focused on software development and customer service. And that's much different than a lot of other companies that I know of on the market that are very heavily loaded in sales and marketing and just have a little bit in the development customer service side, because in a lot of ways companies see that as overhead, as a burden. And so for us, rather than it being a burden, it's part of our culture. It's an important part of how we're able to help our customers.
Yeah, and I imagine that approach to grow organically, without that external funding, has built really strong relationships within your company as well. And that's been the foundation for that growth.
Absolutely. And we're very open, internally, we're very open with our finances. We're very open with our culture, so that it's very transparent. And I'm like that with our clients. We have no long-term contracts. It's something to me that's very important, because I treat relationships between our customers and us like I treat relationships between me and my friends, in the sense that I don't want someone to be friends with me if they don't want to be, just like I don't want a customer if that customer feels trapped, if they feel like I'm only here because I'm in a long-term contract. That doesn't make me feel very good. I want someone to stay as a client of ours because they love it, because they're getting a lot of value out of it. And so that sort of, it's sort of an open hand approach. I don't want anyone to ever feel locked in, like they're trapped in something that they don't like. And so for that reason, we don't have a very high churn rate. People don't leave us because they're continue to have a positive experience working with our software. And so it's a very simple model. And I feel like, I would rather work with people who want to work with me out of a sense of just purely wanting to use our software, and not out of a sense of obligation.
Wow. That's a pretty big edge to have in the software market, I must say, that level of focus on relationships. And, the fact that you actually keep that in perspective, that it's ultimately about a person, it's not about a screen. And I think that's what people, and, even as users, we lose sight of that. So tell me more about Greenrope as the software. What is different about Greenrope? Because I know you've touched on this, that simplicity is really where it's at, because if you can't keep the software simple, then people won't understand it and they'll feel it's actually making their lives more difficult. So how does that feature in what you've created?
Yeah, it's always a challenge, because when you go into business, there really is no such thing as a truly simple business. Everyone's got a lot of moving parts. You have your accounts receivable and payable, you've got your product or your service, you've got to track, all of your marketing, all of your sales. I mean, there's a lot of things, especially people that don't have a lot of experience. When they go into business, they realize, wow, there's a lot here that I have to figure out how to do. And so a lot of what we do is very education focused for that reason. The whole concept behind CRM, actually CRM just started being taught in universities here just in the last couple of years. And so most business owners and people that work in business, their experience with CRM and the software used to manage sales relationships really comes from just using them. So there's not a lot of theory, there's not a lot of strategy, and a lot of that's dictated by a consulting, universe or whatever, consultants running around, and there's no real CRM consulting standardized way of making sure that if you hire a consultant to help you with CRM, that they actually know what they're doing. And everyone comes from their own unique perspective, so someone who's used to using enterprise level software, it doesn't make a lot of sense for them to go to a small business or a solopreneur and say, hey, let me give you this enterprise solution, because the solopreneur is going to think, I can't do this. It doesn't make sense. It's too hard. So on one level, you have a lot of simplicity that you want to drive towards with all of your process. You have to think about what happens. And so there's a process that we take people through where understanding what their market segments are. We help them understand what their internal processes are. We build story arcs, and sort of work with our customers to understand from a strategic perspective, what are you trying to actually accomplish? What does your business do? And then from that, we apply our software to solve those problems. And so the challenge that most companies have is in data fragmentation. And that really, it means, you've got Your email marketing data is held in an email marketing system. You've got your sales data held in a CRM. You've got events data held in an event planning system. You've got any learning and onboarding stuff is held in a learning management system. You've got your account executives using a project manager, and all of those are different pieces of software. And truly, to understand as a business owner how that is really driving your business, you have to figure out how to integrate all that data. And so what we've done is we've put it in a single platform so that it's a single architecture where everything is used in the same interface, and you can jump into any particular one of those things at any time. But if you look at an individual contact, that data all flows together like a newsfeed, like you're used to seeing on Facebook. So you would see every email somebody opened, every form they filled out, every web page they've ever visited, every video they've watched, every everything you can imagine that you could possibly track, we have integrated within the single platform. And so by doing that, you have, it's the simplicity of organizing your information. And it's the ability to do things like lead scoring and marketing automation, setting up process so things happen automatically through all of these different channels. So you can say, I can look at all of these different things that people are doing, and I can say this person generated this many lead scoring points because they watched a video, they clicked on this link, and they visited this web page, and they engaged our person in chat, and they had a demonstration. They talked to our salesperson. And having all of that integrated together means that not only is that data available when you're looking at that particular lead or contact, but now when you jump into each of those systems, you can see how they're all performing on a high level, on a macro level. So from a manager's perspective, you're not having to jump into different pieces of software and hire an army of developers to tie this data together. It's now already tied together. So the challenge a lot of times is a leap in thinking. Most people are used to thinking in terms of, I need to do email marketing, so I'm going to buy an email marketing program. Or I need a sales CRM, so I'm gonna get this CRM for sales, so my sales team puts data in the CRM. And so it requires a shift in thinking for the entire organization, in that you're not just responsible for your little silo. You're not just impacting you and just your boss. You're impacting the entire organization with the work that you do. And everyone's going to learn from it. Everyone's going to benefit from what you're creating. It doesn't just go away and get hidden in some file someplace that nobody looks at. It's part of the permanent record of how the whole business operates.
Yeah.
So it does require a big change. And so on one level, it's a simplified way of running your business. On another level, it requires some serious leadership and vision to put all of that together. And so it takes a lot of preparation, strategy, understanding how this is actually going to work for your business, and creating this whole system.
And like having that overview as a small to medium-sized organization is so powerful. All of the data linked in one place, because as you say, that facilitates cooperation and growth in a different way to having an organization that is built on so many data silos. And this is actually a very real issue, whether we're solo entrepreneurs or, interacting with organizations, because data is just proliferating at a rate we cannot imagine. Yeah. And unless that is meaningful, what's the point? What's the point of having all this data? And so I love how you've really kept that in perspective, again, brought it back to the person, the people using it. If it's not simple at the user interface, what's the point? And so, I'm thinking of in terms of a solo entrepreneur that's, just starting out and needs something that is scalable. So if someone's starting out and goes, okay, maybe my 10-year plan is to have, say 5 staff working with me. And that sounds very slow, but, for some entrepreneurs, that's as big as they want to go.
Nothing wrong with that.
So how does a piece of software like Greenrope cater to those people who are really looking for something scalable, but very incrementally starting at that seed level?
Yeah, it's funny. I had a friend of mine that told me once, he posed this question. He was giving a talk. He said, how do you eat an elephant?
Yeah, exactly.
One bite at a time, right?
Yeah.
The whole idea of eating an elephant is very disturbing. But the idea is that, you have a very large complex problem and you can't tackle it all at once, especially if you're a solopreneur. So you focus on the things that you're going to really want to focus on, the things that you can really do right away. And so setting up the CRM as the core of your business, I think is the first part, so you put all your contacts into the CRM, and then you focus on, so you've got a centralized place where this data lives. The next part that we really focus on is the email marketing component, because that's such a common thing now, especially business to business. Making sure that people are sending their emails through our platform anyway, but making sure that you've got a email marketing system in place. And setting up web analytics. That's another big one, so that your website has tracking on it. And so the advantage with a system like ours, where you've got the CRM integrated with the web analytics, is we can tell you when your contacts in your CRM are on your website. And that's not necessarily new technology, but sometimes it can be kind of tricky to do. And so for us, so we've got a WordPress plugin. We actually have our own CMS that you can use to build web pages and landing pages with. So it's email, web, and CRM that form the real, the starting building blocks of what you're going to do. And then from there, you can build out and integrate things like events and social and learning and, your booking calendars and your event, like all the, a lot of the other things that you can build on top of that. If you had a live chat, video tracking, forms, all these different things. So, having all of that ability to expand when you're ready to tackle them makes things a lot easier. So you're not having to buy different pieces of software and figure out how to link them together. In our system, you're just opening up another tool. So, but regardless, if you're a solopreneur, that's what you focus on when you start. You focus on the CRM and then your email and your web traffic. And that's your fundamental building blocks, and you kind of grow out from there.
Yeah. Wow. We could do a whole separate interview on that, because that's fascinating how that setup works and how different businesses grow. But I'm keen to talk about you as well in this interview, because you're quite an unusual man who's done some impressive things. You've grown Greenrope over the last 15 years, and it's been as a company for the last 5 years, serving clients all over the world. So how does someone who is, for lack of a better term, a tech head, someone who's a coder, create something, and just to even this out across any industry, you have your craft that you're really good at. How do you then grow that into an organization? How is that for you? What have been some of those key learnings along the way?
I think, I think every good leader recognizes where they're weak, and where they can surround themselves by really capable people. And I've been fortunate to have come in contact with some amazing people. Some of our developers are incredibly brilliant. Our support staff is they're intuitive, they're nice, they're really great people. Our marketing team, we're small. We have to compete as a small organic company. We compete with companies that are thousands of times our size. And, and it's kind of, in some way it's fun, because we'll never be able to outspend our competitors. But if we focus on providing a lot of value to our customers, we don't have to. People will talk about what we can do, what we have done for them. And that's really the goal is, my goal isn't to create this massive company with every company on the planet using our software. I want to work with really good companies that are socially responsible, that have a good mission, a vision behind what they're trying to create, who appreciate what we're doing for them too. And, it's one of those mutual respect things. I don't want to just take on everybody as a client. I want to have great clients. And I think, like most of your audience, and you especially, you really care about making sure that you work with good people who are trying to make a positive impact on the world. And so that's really, it's the same focus. And that's really where long-term relationships are built from.
Yeah. And so tell us more about some of those speed bumps along the way to building a company like Greenrope.
Yeah, they're always there. you kind of learn. I started the company with a business partner, and we ended up having different visions about the direction that we wanted to take the company. And so, there were a lot of lessons there, both learned about myself and learned about dealing with other people who have different opinions and coming to consensus and figuring out the best way forward when you have an impasse. And, fortunately we were able to work through it, and I was able to buy him out. And so, now I control Cooler Email, our old company, and Greenrope. And so it's been nice to be able to create a sort of that unified vision behind our business. But there were a lot of stumbling blocks. I remember back in 2010, I gave a presentation to a room full of business leaders here in San Diego. This group where they put you up on stage and you stand up there and you kind of give your vision about what you want to do with your business, and then people kind of ask you questions about it. And they kind of do it in a way of trying to call you out, like you're this is a bad idea, whatever. And I got up there and I got absolutely skewered. I mean, the whole room, everyone, it was brutal. They were saying, there's no way you could build something like Greenrope. There's no way it'll work. You don't have the knowledge, you don't have the capability. You're competing with too many other companies that have way more resources, and there's no way you'll compete. And so I take things like that as a challenge, and decided that if they all thought that I couldn't do it, then they probably would be saying the same thing to a lot of other companies out there. And so I think that for that reason, we're kind of ahead of the market in terms of our capability. When you talk to other companies about what they're looking for in terms of CRM and marketing automation, those visions were created many years ago. And I think they're still kind of catching up to what that capability is. Like, most people still think in terms of marketing automation for just like what I was talking about with the fundamentals, with the web traffic and the email traffic. And there's so much more to the world than just those two things. You've got social media, you've got live chat, you've got all these other things that you've got print, offline, QR codes, like all these things that can feed into your marketing mix, that when it comes to most software on the planet, there's no easy way to integrate all that together. You have to hire developers to figure out how to link that data together. And it's a ton of work. And so that was our vision, was to create the system so you didn't have to do all that work. And I'm very proud of what we've created. I think we've got a great team. I think our software is really good, because it does mix all of that together in a really positive user experience. And it can be complex from a management side, but it's not really that complex from an implementation side once you figure out what you want to do.
Wow, you've really accomplished something pretty impressive in terms of, a software company that is focused on organic growth and very people-based, and is actually really responsive to market needs, your customers' needs, and probably your size and that organic approach is what has allowed you to do that. And of course, you as a person, you're probably the greatest selling point for Greenrope. Like, your approach is very, very balanced, and I love that. I'm so excited to be even speaking with you about this, and we could definitely do a part 2 at some point. But I just want to ask you, is there anything that you want to sort of share with our audience, particularly people who really aspire to be someone like you, who's actually started from nothing and grown something that is actually really valuable to society, is making a positive difference to people's lives? What would you say to them?
So it's funny, because I was just this last week, there's a program that we have here called Junior Achievement, where you go to schools and you talk to kids in middle school and high school and elementary school about what it's like. So I was just this last week, I was like,
give us your answer.
Well, I got asked that same question. That was by kids in 8th grade, so it's a little different. But, but really, the answer is still the same. It's perseverance. It's when someone says that you can't do something, ask yourself why. When I was in front of that room and everyone was saying there's no way you'd be able to accomplish that, I had to ask myself why. Is it because it's a dumb idea, or is it because they couldn't do it? Or is it beyond the scope of where their minds can go? And I think that a lot of people who have ideas, that they see a problem that they want to solve, and people will tell them, well, that problem is too hard to solve. You can't do that. You'll never get people to do X, or you'll never find a market for your product, or, whatever. And sometimes they might be right. And we have to learn our lessons the hard way. But a lot of times we use those as stepping stones to guide us towards what the world really wants, what our calling really is. And in fact, Greenrope is an outgrowth of a side project that I had for my hockey team. And so I play ice hockey
Yep.
a couple times a week. And they had asked about having a scheduling tool so that everyone knew who was supposed to bring the beer. And
That's great.
so the first iteration of Greenrope was actually a scheduling program that I used to organize who was bringing beer to hockey. And that was 10, 11 years ago.
That's definitely people focused.
Yeah. So, and I realized as we went down the development of that particular, path, I realized there's really not a lot of money to be made from beer league hockey teams. But a lot of the ideas behind organizing a small group of hockey players, extend that substantially into the business realm. And a lot of the same principles could apply. And so it was one of those things. It was all about the perseverance. It was the building the email marketing tool in conjunction with building this thing for my hockey team, that both independently were not going to go anywhere, but together with the right perseverance could create Greenrope. And that is the future. And that has fueled their growth. And so it really comes down to having that sense of perseverance and keeping your mind and your ears open so that you listen to what the market really needs, and you learn how to really address ways to help people in a way that's meaningful for them. It is just that combination of making sure that you don't give up, and making sure that you are driving towards something that's not futile. You're creating something that's actually going to be useful, valuable for people. And sometimes it just takes time to figure out what that is. So I guess my advice is just to keep an open mind and keep working hard, because you can't stop. There's a famous quote from Van Halen. There's no power around to keep a good man down.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that, just not gender specific, but it's the lyrics. It's Sammy Hagar in all of his wisdom. Really, it's about making sure that you know what you're about. What impact do you want to make on the world, and not letting people get between you and the impact that you want to make.
Yes, so inspiring. Thank you, Lars. That's very well said. I'm so sure you'll be a sage one day in a few decades' time with your own quotes. Yeah. Wow, what a pleasure. Thank you for sharing your experience and your wisdom and a little bit from the software realm with our audiences today. And I really value your time. So thank you so much. And I encourage those of you out there that are listening, whether you're a solo entrepreneur or you are a business with staff, have a look at Greenrope, greenrope.com, and see if it's something that you actually want to implement in your business from a holistic, people-based perspective. Thank you, Lars.
All right. Thank you.